Hello, everyone. My name is Isabel Duran, and I am the Workforce Development Admin Manager here at the LAEDC. On behalf of the Center for a Competitive Workforce, the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, and the LAOC Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research at Mount San Antonio College, we all just want to say welcome to the Essential Workers in Critical Infrastructure Industries at the Time of COVID-19 Report webinar. So this report is the latest in a series of reports done by CCW, LAEDC, and COE, and focuses on the occupations of essential workers in critical infrastructure or frontline industries in the Los Angeles basin. So I'm hoping that at the end of today's webinar, you guys will be leaving with information on major trends that are occurring in frontline industries, the projected regional employment in the target industries, and also the essential worker jobs identified that have the brightest future for community college students in the region. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Richard Virches, the Executive Director of CCW, who will go ahead and give a brief introduction on CCW. Richard?
Thank you, Isabel, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are excited today to present the Center for Competitive Workforce 16th report over the last 4 years. The Center for Competitive Workforce is a regional project funded by Strong Workforce and is a project of the 19 community colleges in the LA region. These reports are produced as a partnership in collaboration with the LA Orange County Center of Excellence and LAEDC's Institute for Applied Economics. And you will hear from both of them today on their co-produced report. But we're excited at the Center for Competitive Workforce to be presenting a report on such a timely topic. We know that both industry and jobs have been permanently impacted by the pandemic. And it's so important for us to continue to have our finger on the pulse of the economy, our finger on the pulse of where and what employers are thinking, a finger on the pulse of the future to ensure that we're preparing students and students of all ages and education background who are part of the community college system. While we understand community colleges largely to be a system of higher education for recent high school graduates, community colleges are actually a lifelong learning system that includes students who are currently enrolled in universities, who are taking courses, who are currently employed and upskilling on 21st century skills and technologies and machinery that only community colleges offer, especially at affordable rates. We know that community colleges are a system of continuing learning for individuals with bachelor's degrees and advanced degrees, as we've learned from another one of our regional projects, Strong Workforce projects, the California Cloud Project, where both high school students, community college students, and bachelor's and even master's completed students have participated in that project. And so we understand community colleges to be in a critical role in our economy and our education systems. And the Center for Competitive Workforce has led efforts and supported colleges to develop and maintain partnerships with industry and employers to ensure that we know how industry is evolving, what the demands are for talent, what the demands are for skills, and to ensure that we can guide our students, again, of all ages, of all education backgrounds, of all economic backgrounds, to be prepared for 21st century jobs and careers, but also as we rebuild the economy following this pandemic and throughout this pandemic. And there's no question that our dependence on employees, on workers during this COVID pandemic, is our lifeline. And there are some, as you will hear today from both Luke and Shannon, there are some important insights that our students and our faculty and employers and our partners. So I want to welcome not only our administrators and faculty who join us today. I want to welcome all of our workforce development partners, especially from LA County and Workforce Development, Aging, and Community Services who joined us today from the City of LA, from the South Bay and Pacific Gateway Workforce Development Boards. We welcome you from the LA County Office of Education, from other workforce partners such as JVS, who are so important, and CCW was intended to bring all of these key partners together to collaborate regionally, to coordinate regionally, and to collectively ensure that the individuals we serve and that we connect to employment and careers can take advantage of our individual and collective strengths. I want to recognize, before turning the program over to the new president of the LA County Economic Development Corporation, Stephen Chung, I want to take this moment to recognize two very important partners who, one of whom just retired and one of whom will soon retire later this month, who have been champions of workforce in LA County, in the LA region, champions of education and champions of youth. So first, Robert Sines, who recently retired as Assistant General Manager, the City of LA's Economic and Workforce Development Department, but he promises to continue to be a supporter and champion of our work with the Center for Competitive Workforce, and truly another champion who has been so important to CCW and to the community colleges, Jan Swinton, the CTE Dean at Glendale Community College, who is retiring later this month. She has been a tireless supporter and champion of CCW and of our work, a member of the Executive Committee and Advisory Council for CCW. Jan, if you're on the line, know how much we appreciate you and we'll miss you, but we'll count on your continued support and partnership. And then last of all, I want to recognize someone else who's joined us today, and that is the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Labor, Jane Oates, who has been a partner, who has inspired our work and has really been a great supporter of regional collaboration and regional coordination for all the LA partners. And so Jane, now president of Working Nation, welcome. We continue to appreciate you, your leadership, and your support. But I couldn't be more happier to introduce Stephen Chung, who if you don't know him or have not met him, those of you in the education and workforce community, we could not be more fortunate to have Stephen in this new leadership role at the LAEDC, as also the president of the World Trade Center LA. He brings an international and global perspective to our work, and LA is a global center of both the economy and workforce, and we are looking forward to his vision and his leadership to support our efforts going forward. And so before we get to to Shannon and Luke, let me introduce you to Stephen Chung, president of the LAEDC and the World Trade Center LA.
Thank you so much, Richard. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. It's great to see everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation to join this important conversation. I'll just be quick and talk about the importance of this report and this research. This is, I believe, the 15th report of the series, and I think a lot of the times as we're looking at the information, we don't step back to look at the true impact. And later on, my colleague Shannon Sedgwick will be presenting a lot more detail, but I just want to emphasize that in the last few months, since the beginning of the Safer at Home initiative until about September, over 400,000 jobs were lost from this region. That's a significant amount of jobs. And now, as we're entering into another phase of potential decline in our business activities, this is going to have long-term impact. And that's why the work that CCW has done in partnership with all the community colleges and all the other partners is so important, because it builds the pathway for us into looking into recovery. We, as we're looking in the future, and again, Shannon's going to go into more details with this, you'll see certain sectors that are going to be more challenged, whether it's food services, whether it's accommodation. We know our tourism industry is going to be hit pretty hard continually until the vaccine is going to be adopted by a lot of countries and a lot of folks as well. But meanwhile, we are looking at these target industries for growth, for potential growth, and especially the essential workers. And basically, as we're looking at the reimagining Los Angeles, recovering, we have to basically look at how do we recover those industry sectors, how do we grow them, and the only way for us to really rebuild these sectors is to be able to attract more investments and more companies to open up. And that's why the international perspective becomes very important as well. As the rest of the United States will be also suffering and going through some issues as well, one of the best ways for us to increase industry activities and also business activities is to attract foreign direct investment from around the world. And recently, we've already gotten a lot of interest. This week, I was just doing a webinar with UK companies that are ready to make investment into the Los Angeles region. Last week, we were working with Japanese companies. Over 100 of them have attended to learn about basically what it means for Los Angeles recovery in the future. They haven't forgotten that in 2028, we will be hosting the Olympic Games for the 3rd time. They haven't forgotten that we'll be hosting the Super Bowl in a couple of years, and all these different great activities and all these different investments that's already here. So it's creating all these opportunities for potential job growth, and we need to work in partnership for the talent development and workforce development. And that's why these data sets and this information, in collaboration with CCW, led by Shannon and our partners at the LAOC Center for Excellence, it's been great because it gives us a data set to go off of. And then from that information, we can attract international companies. You don't know how many folks from around the world have asked us for these models in terms of these partnership. And that's why the last few years, establishing this entire network of partnership with all of you has become vital for our survival and our revitalization in the future. So I want to thank you for your commitments. I want to thank you for your hard work. And I want to thank you in advance for the hard work that you'll be doing in the next year as we're going into recovery mode and reimagination mode, because without this partnership, we won't be able to get to the next phase for our economy to become more vibrant and more hopefully resilient in the future. So thank you, Richard, for the invitation again. And at this point, I want to pass it back.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate that context. So with that in mind, I'm really excited to introduce Shannon Sedgwick. She's the director of our Institute for Applied Economics here at the LA County Economic Development Corporation. So you should see her slides on the screen here, and we'll make these available through our website as well following today's presentation. But with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Shannon. Please take it from here.
Thank you, Claire. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to discuss our latest CCW report, looking at essential workers and critical infrastructure industries at the time of COVID-19 in the LA Basin. Before I begin, I want to say that I hope you and your family are well and continuing to stay safe and social distance during the holidays as we find ourselves in the midst of a second wave of infections during our cold and flu season. This is our first CCW report completed after the arrival of the novel coronavirus, and we wanted to look closer at the workers and occupations that exist in industries that have been identified by the state of California as critical infrastructure industries, also referred to as frontline industries. The emergence of the pandemic and its effect on workers in the LA Basin has demonstrated the critical importance of essential workers in these frontline industries. Today, I'll be sharing some of the key findings of the report, provide information on frontline industries and their essential workers, share a few career ladders that highlight pathways from related low skill to high skill occupations in frontline industries, and share a few final thoughts before turning it over to Luke Meyer, the director of the Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research in the Los Angeles and Orange County region, who will be sharing the supply side analysis from this report with you all. Key findings of this report show that workers in frontline industries have more job security, that most jobs have average wages, that the age of workers trends older, and that upskilling is important. Workers in frontline industries experienced less job loss compared to workers in non-essential industries. In the LA Basin, 23.6% of the jobs in non-essential industries were lost between the first and second quarters of 2020 due to the pandemic and its impact on the economy. However, in frontline industries, employment dropped by only 6.3% over the same period. Despite their essential functions, the low and middle skill occupations in frontline industries, they have average wages just slightly above the living wages for Los Angeles and Orange counties. Entry-level wages are usually below $25 per hour, and in many cases below $20 per hour. In most essential industries, the majority of workers are above 35 years of age. In 4 out of the 10 industries, over 50% of workers were ages 55 years or older. There were just 3 frontline industries where the ages of 25 to 34 years had the highest proportion of workers. Our analysis of initial unemployment insurance claims in California has shown that unique claimants filing for UI benefits during the COVID-19 crisis with the educational attainment of a high school diploma represent over 60% of the pre-pandemic labor force for this cohort. In contrast, only 30% of those with an associate degree and 14% of those with a bachelor's degree filed for these benefits. Our takeaway is that upskilling through community college programs in any industry will provide workers with higher job security during economic shocks. Next slide. Frontline industries are identified as essential to meeting basic human needs and safety requirements in a time of crisis. This includes pandemics, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, including earthquakes and fires, and more. During these situations, workers in critical infrastructure industries are expected to continue working in person, regardless of the challenges they may be facing personally due to the indispensable nature of their work. The general public relies heavily on workers in these frontline industries, also referred to as essential workers, to provide crucial services that keep their communities functioning, including healthcare, utilities, public safety, food security, communications, transportation, and a range of public services provided by the local, state, and federal government. On March 19th, California Governor Gavin Newsom issued a stay-at-home order, which mandated all non-essential businesses, which are generally defined as recreational, not critical to personal well-being, to close. Restaurants, hair and nail salons, theaters, fitness centers, places of worship, and more were shut down. And the order exempted individuals working in critical industries, identifying those as essential. Next slide. The LAEDC grouped the list of essential activities into 10 groups: healthcare and related, transportation, logistics and e-commerce, grocery, convenience and drugstores, social and community services, energy, water and waste management, communications and IT, industrial, commercial and residential buildings, critical manufacturing, finance, insurance, critical professional services and related, and government. Just over 40% of all payroll workers in the LA Basin were classified as essential, working in these critical infrastructure industries. Next slide. Now, these workers are employed across the wide range of frontline industries. However, healthcare and related, they employed the largest share of workers, accounting for approximately 20% of all employment in these frontline industries. Businesses related to industrial, commercial, and residential buildings rank second for employing the most essential workers, driven primarily by high figures in the construction industry, which was allowed to continue as essential here in Southern California. Next slide. Frontline industries have exhibited more job stability compared to non-essential industries, as their continued operations have insulated them from the layoffs and downsizing that non-essential workers have experienced. We estimate that in the second quarter of 2020, while payroll employment in non-essential industries decreased in the basin by just under 24%, the frontline industries lost just over 6%, which is a significant difference. Next slide. Looking ahead over the next 5 years, we project frontline industries to grow by 2.2% overall, adding close to 51,000 net new jobs across the 10 groupings, with government, social and community services, and healthcare and related leading the way. While this growth may seem modest, many non-essential industries are forecast to still be in the process of recovery over the same period, with employment levels in 2024 still falling below 2019 pre-pandemic levels, especially in hospitality industries, food services and accommodation, and arts, entertainment, and recreation industries. Next slide, please. The 2.6 million workers employed in frontline industries in the LA Basin are employed in occupations across a number of diverse industries with a wide range of skills and capabilities. As such, we examine the demographic characteristics of essential workers in the basin and compare them with the all industry average. We also take a deeper look at the occupations in these industries and the distribution of employment by skill level. Next slide, please. Looking at the age distribution of essential workers in the LA Basin, we see that older cohorts account for a larger shares of employment in frontline industries, and essential workers that are below the age of 25 years account for 6.6% of workers compared to a 10.2% across all industries. Frontline industries have slightly larger shares of workers with lower levels of educational attainment. Next slide. Over half of the essential workers are Hispanic and just over half are female. Next slide. If we look at the skills distribution of essential workers, only 17% are in occupations classified as above middle skill. So there's a large representation of workers who have a high school diploma, less than high school education, or that have an associate's degree or certificate or non-degree award. Next slide. And if we look at the occupations that exist in frontline industries that have the most employment, we see that many have lower wages as indicated by the orange color. Despite the stay-at-home orders and the widespread business closures that have impacted the livelihoods of countless residents, workers in critical infrastructure industries have generally been able to maintain steady employment and incomes as their sectors were allowed to continue operating. Although sustained work throughout the pandemic has threatened many low-wage essential workers with higher exposure to the virus, it has also protected the financial stability of their households to a much higher degree than similar low-wage workers in non-essential industries operating under strict restrictions or forced to close. As frontline industries will operate no matter what economic shocks may arrive, they can provide career pathways for lower skilled workers to progress and advance to higher skill positions, all while remaining insulated from the employment and financial insecurity of unforeseen catastrophes like a global pandemic. Next slide, please. We've identified several career pathways in essential industries that allow workers in frontline industries to upskill and advance to occupations with higher wages. First, we have construction. Starting off at the lower skill level, we have the occupations of helpers, and construction laborers. And through upskilling and increased experience and going through educational programs, they can advance to the career of carpenter, first line supervisor of construction trades and extraction, and construction managers at the higher skill level. Next slide, please. And we look at some of the required knowledge and required skills and tools used across these occupations. Next slide, please. Nursing is another pathway that exists within essential industries that can start off with personal care aides and home health aides. And with increasing levels of education and training, they can progress through to middle skill occupations, including licensed vocational nurses, and even beyond that, registered nurses, and at the master's level, nurse practitioners. Next slide, please. The nursing skills and knowledge include medicine, therapy and counseling, active listening, social perceptiveness, and there's a variety of tools used, including, medical equipment, and also a lot of technology due to electronic health records and more interactive tools being used with patients. Next slide. Within frontline industries, you still need accounting. You still have billing and posting clerks that are working. You have bookkeeping and accounting clerks. And with more education and upskilling, those people in those roles can have access to a job as an accountant with a bachelor's degree or an auditor. Next slide. And just to summarize some of the skills and knowledge and tools that are used in this field and along this career ladder. So now that we've looked into frontline industries and their essential workers, let's catch up a little on where we stand with the virus now. All Southern California counties, they find themselves in the most restrictive tier of the 4-tier reopening plan, California's blueprint for a safer economy, which was issued on August 28th. The plan uses risk-based criteria, including test positivity and adjusted case rates, to dictate the tightening and loosening of allowable activities, and the length of time between those changes to evaluate how movement from tier to tier is impacting the trajectory of the disease. As the number of new cases have risen across the state recently, counties which once were in less restrictive tiers now find themselves facing reinstated restrictions. And effective November 21st, non-essential activities have been mandated by the state to cease between the hours of 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. in counties in the widespread Tier 1 shown here in purple. As of December 1st, just over 99% of California's population reside in counties assigned in this most restrictive tier. Next slide. This means that essential workers are more important than ever as we see these fluctuations. We see that their employment prospects are much more stable than their counterparts, especially with the lower skill and middle skill workers that are in non-essential industries. With some of the issues that are happening and with the loss of supplemental unemployment benefit payments, which was propping up consumer spending. A lot of individuals living in the basin, which has a high cost of living, are really struggling to make ends meet. And we see the secondary effects of that starting to play out through increased closures. Just a few final thoughts. Throughout the changes in the pandemic and the first wave and the second wave, we've seen that essential industries are relatively stable. The downside of that is that frontline industries are required to interact with the public and thus are risking their personal safety. So we have to be sure to give consideration to these individuals who are making our day-to-day lives easier at risk to their own health and their family's health. Growth in essential industries in the upcoming years will likely take place because they didn't see the same type of hit to their operations as non-essential industries. And no matter what happens, we will require their services. Going forward, we expect to see public administration, which is government, and healthcare to see the most growth, mostly because healthcare will always continue to grow, especially as our population continues to age and require more services. And government payrolls, once a vaccine is widely available and some normal activity resumes, they'll likely rehire to fill positions that have been deferred, and likely add additional workers to their payrolls to help work through some of the longer term effects of what happened, meaning the provision of services that will likely be required beyond the pandemic due to the severity of the economic disruption that's taken place. Different occupational pathways can allow for personal and career development. These pathways that exist in frontline industries do represent more employment stability, and they are essential to our quality of life. And they're core to societal operation, and so they will always and should always be valued for everyone waking up and going to their essential frontline industries job. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it back to Claire.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That's such important information, and I'm really eager for everyone on the webinar to have the opportunity to be able to look through the report in more detail and to really digest all of the incredible data that is included in it. So thank you again, Shannon, so much. And with that, I will hand it over to Luke for the supply side analysis.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Shannon, for that. I am going to focus on the supply side of this report, and I know that conclusions and recommendations often come at the end of presentations such as this, but I think the overarching theme of this report is to as many students as we can get directed into these frontline industries and educated in these areas, the more likely their employment outcomes will be stable and well-paying, as they are less likely, as you saw from Shannon's presentation, to be affected negatively by the pandemic. So again, I'm the director for the LAOC Center of Excellence. We're hosted at Mount San Antonio College. And what we add to this report is the supply side analysis, which in short is just our sort of talent pool, or how many completions there are from programs related to these occupations. So without any further ado, we'll get into how we conducted the work for our portion of the report. So across the top, we have the 5 middle skill target occupations here. You can see them: bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks, LVNs, computer user support specialists, the social and human service assistants, and paralegals and legal assistants. And then using our top to sock crosswalk from the Center of Excellence, which top is the taxonomy of programs. It's what the community colleges use to code all program offerings into a taxonomy. And then the SOC, the standard occupational classification for the occupations. So you see some of these occupations are linked to a single program, like LVN, which is highly specialized. And then you have computer user support specialists has been linked to several programs, because there are a lot more varied offerings in IT where students can get training and be eligible to work in these occupations. These crosswalks, they're not perfect for everything, but it's a really great starting point to begin to link training to responsibilities on the job. And in terms of the programs that we looked at specifically, I know this is a large table, but over the years that we studied, it's just a 3-year period, 2016-17, 17-18, and 18-19, and then we have the latest 3-year average there on the right. Overall, in the LA Basin, completions from these programs increased over 29%. So that is very encouraging news, and that actually aligns nicely with the Chancellor's Office Vision for Success goals, which is to increase by, I think it's the number of students by 20% over the next 5 years. So while they're not apples to apples in terms of comparisons, this is a count of awards. The other is the count of students for the success goal, but this is encouraging that they've increased over 29% from these select programs. And with these, you see 14 out of the 21 programs, which have highlighted in green, have shown an increase or stayed the same over this 3-year period. A lot of them in the IT sector. You see all the computer programs up there. That's encouraging news. So this is for all programs from Los Angeles County and Orange County that are listed here. And then this next slide, we look specifically at the 19 LA community colleges. So of all the awards that I showed on the last slide, 65% of them were awarded from colleges from LA. And again, the ones in green, these colleges showed an increase over the period from these select programs. The other colleges have shown increase in other areas, but for the occupations and programs selected for this report, there are 13 out of the 19 colleges that showed increases over the time frame. And so this is the meat of the work that we do at the Center of Excellence, which is a supply-demand analysis. So on one hand, in red, we compare the number of annual openings projected for each of these occupations over the next 5 years compared to the completions over this 3-year period. And as you can see, there are fewer awards being issued than there are job openings, which means that students leaving these programs, there should be ample opportunity for them to enter the working field. If the opposite were true, we would have a situation where the labor market could be oversaturated by qualified workers. So this is encouraging, and this also shows that there is room for growth in these programs that train for these students, that train for these occupations. And here are the pathway occupations. So moving past the middle skill occupations into jobs where students could upskill and earn higher wages, higher responsibility, things like that. And so you see the same pattern emerges here, where there are a lot more opportunities than there are completers from programs. Again, this is encouraging and shows that there can be room for growth. And I'll repeat what I said in the start, is that the more students we can aim towards these occupations and frontline industries, the better chances they have of having secure employment opportunities, as opposed to students leaving from some culinary programs or hospitality programs, which has been hit hardest by COVID-19. And so the next few slides, I'm going to show some student employment outcome metrics that are collected by our community college system. The first being median annual earnings by program. So this data comes from 17-18, and it looks at all the completers from the programs and matches their wage data from the unemployment insurance data set from California EDD to their program of study. The red dotted line that I have across the screen represents all career education programs in the LA basin. The average is $33,048 annually. For comparison's sake, in LA County, the living wage standard, which is basically a measure of if a single adult with no children, in order to make ends meet, they need to earn above $15.04 per hour, which comes out to be just over $31,000 per year. So great news that our students are leaving programs and earning above the living wage. Now, I've color-coded these mostly for my own purposes and also to sort of put these in a tiered approach. So we have on the left the green bars, and notice that 3 out of the 5 of those are in our IT-related programs, and then you have accounting and paralegal there, which are exceeding the average and exceeding the living wage. And then in the center, a few orange ones that are right, hovering right around the average within a few percentage points. And then the ones in red on the right, if you notice, a lot of these are the programs tailored more towards social and human services, where the earnings are generally not as high as others. But take this with a grain of salt, as these are, students just leaving their training programs, oftentimes with not a ton of experience in their field. And as they progress in their field, you can expect that their wages will increase. So that's from 17-18. And then in a similar vein, we have the proportion of students attaining the living wage by program. So the average, again, with the vertical red dotted line, is across all programs in the LA basins, all career education programs. The average is 50%. So half of students earning the living wage, half falling below it. And again, the pattern with this is similar to the last slide, where the ones in green at the top are exceeding what the average is for all CE programs. The ones in orange in the middle, licensed vocational nursing, software applications, computer support, and family studies. And then the ones in red falling below the average, which again, you can see are the programs linked to social and human service type occupations. And then lastly, the percent working in their field of study. This data comes from the great work out of Santa Rosa Junior College with the Career Technical Education Outcome Survey. Students are asked on a self-reporting basis whether they are working closely in their field of study or not. So it is up to the student to decide, yes, I'm working in my field of study, or no, I'm not working in my field of study. Across all programs, the average is 71% of students, so just over 3 out of 4, 7 out of 10, working in their field of study. And you notice a lot of red in here, and I don't want that to scare anyone, because if you see some of these programs down here, a lot of them are some of the IT related programs. So students are reporting, hey, I'm not working in my field of study, but if we look back at these 2 slides, students leaving these programs are earning some of the higher wages of the select programs. So although they say, hey, I'm not working in my field of study, which is sort of a subjective measure, they are earning wages to earn a good living, and hopefully with experience can end up working in what they consider to be their field of study. So finally, and circling back to starting this off, these are some community college centric recommendations from the report and from the research that we did. Number 1 is to educate and inform prospective students about the selected career pathways that Shannon shared, and also the ones within essential industries, and promote these to current students and prospective students. And I think the really great aspect of this report, and thanks to Shannon, we have this in there, are some of the occupational profiles and some of the industry snapshots, these things that can almost serve as a standalone resource. the occupational profiles especially, and the career pathways, I would say could be posted in career development offices and things like that, or career counselors' offices. But, you know, with a lot of things not happening in person, it could be, those things could be distributed to students by faculty teaching in these programs to let students know, hey, here are the opportunities that are going to be the most stable for the foreseeable future. And here are the wages, here are things like that. And here are the skills required. So students know, hey, I'm going to aim for these occupations, or I'm going to aim for these that are more stable and pay a living wage. So there are resources within this report and this webinar itself that can help direct students and raise awareness about these programs and these occupations. Number two, and possibly one of the more important aspects of this, is to partner with regional employers to develop internships and other opportunities for the target occupations. And the good news about this is that a lot of this is currently being done and has been done by CCW with the industry councils and the program advisories that bring industry and community college faculty and admin together to know what are employers looking for, and to partner with the community colleges so that we can secure employment opportunities for our students. The third recommendation is to either increase or maintain enrollment in these programs that are related to frontline industries, because as Shannon pointed out, these industries have been much less impacted than non-essential industries, and therefore should have more stable employment opportunities for students. And then the fourth one, it's not really related to this report specifically, but there is a lot of regional talk and always a lot of emphasis on knowing where our students end up working and what they're doing. We do have data available on this from CalPass Plus Launch Board, collaboration between the Chancellor's Office and WestEd, that has a lot of really great data points, some which I shared with you, and several more. And then, as I mentioned before, the Career Technical Education Outcomes Survey out of Santa Rosa Junior College, which has a rich data set asking students questions such as, are you working part-time, full-time? What was your job search experience? How satisfied were you with your education? And then, of course, did your wages change from before you received your training until after? So we have some great resources available, but it can always be added to make a more robust data set to tell a story about this student entered, this student progressed, and here's what they're doing now, and here's how they're faring. So these are the recommendations from the report that are central to the community colleges. And with that, that concludes my portion of the report. And my contact information is here. So I'll turn it back over to Claire. I know we'll have a Q&A section and whatnot.
Thank you so much, Luke. We really appreciate it. And I'll just give a minute for those of you that are jotting down that contact information. Before we dive into how we're going to be using this report and all the different sort of action items and where we're looking to really utilize this data for our programming and our strategic initiatives, we do want to just spend some time on Q&A. I know that since March, we've been getting so many questions asking for this data. So we're really excited to sort of finally have it. And we want to make sure that we're able to answer any of the questions that you might have. So while you're typing out those questions in the chat box, please don't be shy. We're looking forward to your questions. So go ahead and submit them there. I can direct the first one toward Luke because that came in during your presentation. We have someone who's just inquiring around manufacturing careers. They didn't see many in your presentation. So if you could perhaps address that.
Sure, certainly. That's a great question. So the occupations and programs that are listed in the report are not an exhaustive list. If you look into the report, the Frontline Industries, critical manufacturing is one of those industries. The occupations that we selected have the highest number of projected annual openings while paying a living wage. And as I stated, it's not an exhaustive list. So there are some manufacturing occupations that would be a good fit in there, specifically some biotech and pharmaceutical manufacturing occupations. As an aside, The BLS put on a webinar yesterday where they adjust their baseline 10-year projections, and with varying degrees of the impact of COVID-19 from moderate to strong. And one of the findings that emerged is things in pharmaceuticals, or as we know, the development of a vaccine and manufacturing of that. So there are certainly some manufacturing occupations that are not highlighted in the report that could be a good opportunity for students.
We actually just put on a webinar with one of our partners, CMTC, the LAEDC did, where we're looking at the manufacturing industry and how it reacted to COVID. And because the manufacturing sector was split between essential and non-essential, for this report, because we're looking at industries and occupations, our target occupations are basically those that exist within the frontline industries for that particular skills classification that we project to have the most openings. So we're targeting there. It doesn't mean that they're not present within, the list of occupations as a whole that have promising prospects, but they didn't make that kind of top level cut. But they are split across essential and non-essential. So you're seeing in the manufacturing sector your fashion related industries, your clothing manufacturing, your textile mills. Those have been impacted pretty severely and aren't actually rebounding. So not yet.
Thank you, Shannon and Luke. We have another question that came in sort of around, are there specific needs of employers that we can help support? I know a few people on the panel might want to address that, and we'll also talk a little bit more about the work that we're doing with employers, because it's certainly critical that we work hand in hand with them as part of the economic recovery. But if anyone on the panel has something to sort of add to that, I know that some of that was covered with the skills needed as well. And I would highly recommend when you download the report, if you look in the appendix at the training programs, that's also a great resource that I would recommend utilizing.
Maybe Claire, before we come back to that question, sure, where we could talk about our engagement with employers and where we're really getting direct input from small, large, and medium-sized employers. There's a question about entrepreneurship that maybe we could go to before we come back to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, where does entrepreneurship fit in? Are more job seekers moving in that direction? Maybe they should provide products and services to frontline the workforce. So if anyone has any thoughts sort of on entrepreneurship, where that fits into this data, that would be great.
I can say a few things about entrepreneurship. One, not particularly captured by any specific industry, as entrepreneurs can, start a restaurant, open up a manufacturing plant. I purchased a Chihuahua face guard for someone the other day from someone that popped up and started making them. So entrepreneurs could fill some of these niches within these fields, but specific to that, I don't have anything else to add other than it is not captured by any one particular industry, but rather across all.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just second that it's really hard to speak about entrepreneurship as a whole when we're looking at industry and employment data. But what's a little bit different, because this is an economic shock, and unfortunately, the lower skilled, lower wage workers have been disproportionately impacted by the effects of the pandemic. When you're thinking about entrepreneurship, you're usually thinking about individuals that can obtain financing, that maybe have savings, or maybe are in a position to where they have the education and skills to consult. And in this instance, those that have been displaced don't really fit in those categories. So the other thing that's happening is you're having business closures taking place, and there's going to be a little bit of delay for business formation to occur because of, again, people are in debt, people are going through and their resources, and there's going to be a bit of a lag before we see business formation across all industries really pick up again too.
Yeah, I do want to recognize that East LA College has had a partnership with OmniWorks on entrepreneurial training of local residents, and that has been very successful. And I think during COVID, especially with so many closures, there's a lot of space available. And I know that some of the business centers, certainly with the city of LA, are vacant or have a lot of space and available for entrepreneurs. So in terms of this environment is very ripe for it. And community colleges such as East LA College has formed partnerships specifically with entities, organizations, and professionals who are very much focused on developing entrepreneurs and the ideas and their business ideas. And so for for our workforce partners and for our education system to play this critical role in supporting entrepreneurs, this is probably as good a time as any for entrepreneurs to have support and have available space, office space, and technical support. And community colleges should be looked at to support entrepreneurs. But I think every college has, in one form or another, programs in general, and then very specific programs and partnerships such as OmniWorks and East LA College.
Absolutely. And we do have the Regional Director of Employer Engagement, Judy Fox, who focuses on the business sector and entrepreneurship specifically. So that's also a great resource. We have another question just asking around recommendations for community colleges on up training any non-English speakers or anything sort of around that demographic, if any folks have any comments in that regard. That actually might be a good question for some of the community college folks on the line who unfortunately are all muted at this time.
Yes, well, I think again, even the entrepreneurial training program with OmniWorks includes individuals, Spanish speaking, dominant, and then with the adult education programs, as well as at the community colleges supporting non-English speaking, not only Spanish, but others. And maybe if anyone from the community colleges want to respond in the chat box, we welcome that space for your input as well. So just to maybe go back to the question about meeting or what specific needs of employers, and Claire and Stephen, I think you may both want to weigh in, but the CCW has, in partnership with LAEDC, hosts 3 industry council meetings per quarter. Tomorrow, in fact, is the Digital Media and Entertainment Council meeting that always hosts amazing companies and high-level officials in these companies who have been so supportive of our efforts to diversify the workforce, to share their secrets, to share their plans, to share their challenges with us in very frank and honest ways, and have welcomed our encouragement to increase the number of opportunities to support faculty, to create internships, to consider apprenticeships, and to even understand the likelihood and the possibility of these opportunities, these work-based learning opportunities for the individuals we serve, including in our work with the LA County Workforce Development, Aging and Community Services Department with the Richard Caesar, who has always been a partner in ensuring that we're also looking at reentry and the opportunities for reentry, both education, training, and employment. It's been amazing the response that we've received from employers. And so both the industry councils and then most recently, the last 2 years, the regional program advisory meetings that CCW has hosted in partnership with LAEDC have really convened employers to really make some strong commitments. And it's really designed to connect the community college faculty, community college administrators, and staff to these employers to follow up to ensure that students take advantage of them. We've also utilized technology, and LAEDC has developed 2 portals, 2 online platforms to manage communications, to coordinate, and to centralize work-based learning, internships, jobs in the highest growth industries, so that there's a dedicated centralized database that our colleges and our partners can access, at their leisure, at their convenience, where we're really trying to regionalize and the coordination, and no one can do this better than LAEDC on behalf of all of the partners. And so I think in terms of what we can do for employers, these are revealed in every one of these meetings. The meetings are summarized. Those meeting notes are posted. So we want to make sure that you all are aware of these regional resources that LAEDC has dedicated a large team to really support on an ongoing basis. These reports that both Shannon and Luke are responsible for, and their teams, are really critical for ensuring that they set the roadmap. But then we use this roadmap to engage employers and to continue that discussion to complement the data with intelligence. And so, Mercy, your question about what specific needs, it's both helped us understand what is happening in the economy. As Stephen said, what's going to happen in the economy that we need to know and anticipate, including, for example, the new green economy or blue economy and ocean economy that is emerging as we take advantage of one of our most vital resources that we uniquely have, and that is our ocean and the waters, and that we can complement both technology, manufacturing, and innovation with our coastline and water in order to impact both energy and climate, but also our food sources, as well as other resources that can come from the water, or that is coming from the water, or that requires water. And so these are areas that we're beginning or want to explore and need to explore to ensure that we stay on the cutting edge, and that innovation that is occurring and is needed in the economy includes our community college and workforce partners. But the ocean economy is something that we all need to and should collaborate on. So tomorrow, digital media and entertainment, for those of you who may not already be registered, has always exciting lineup. And of course, besides food, I think entertainment has been our other food source, our brain source during this pandemic. So,
Richard, sorry, I didn't realized that I get to speak after this. So if I can jump into a couple of the questions that were before, I didn't answer
Yes.
it. I didn't know I was part of the Q&A part. But when I saw that there was a question about the need for adult ed and apprenticeship and do we project the growth, and tying back to a previous conversation about entrepreneurship, I think there, as we're looking at recovery, as mentioning, as we're looking at 2021 and beyond, and even in 2020, we've seen a lot of entrepreneurs adjust. And tying back to another conversation that we had before with manufacturing, is that some entrepreneurs that were manufacturing certain products were able to pivot and make other types of products, including PPEs, personal protective equipment, to be able to supply. So apron makers are making masks. Wet Design, who makes fountain for the Bellagio Hotel, making face shield. So these entrepreneurs and these companies were able to adjust and pivot. But to Luke and Shannon's point, in terms of new entrepreneurship, it's harder to track one, but one of the other issue is basically financing and capital flow, whether they're able to invest in them at this point. However, going into 2021, there could be, and in my mind, there will be a lot more opportunities. What we're also seeing is that, I was mentioning before, that we're getting a lot of questions from our international partners, is that there's been a suppressed appetite internationally to invest in projects. And the United States is still a very, very strong growth sector for them. So if it's lined up right, if the programs are there, potentially entrepreneurs can take advantage of these new investment sources coming and capital coming from foreign sources to really fill a certain niche. Another niche that I want to also talk about based on COVID, and it's something that we all been looking towards. You guys are all zoomed out. We're all zoomed out. At the same time, as we're looking into the holiday season, people are now looking to their holiday parties. How do you engage with your audience and your members and your friends? And so these new entrepreneurs are coming up with new ideas in terms of online engagement pieces. LAEDC now we're looking at working with 2-Bit Circus, a company that's been growing over the last few years and have to adjust very quickly in terms of providing online entertainment. So these are the things that I think are opportunities there. But tying back to some of the things that were presented by Luke earlier, is that the educational aspect, the training for computer, for understanding how to program, understanding how to develop these resources and these products, it's going to be so vital for the future of entrepreneurship. If you don't have the basis for it, you won't be able to go in the future. Last part, I'll wrap up with my soapbox kind of speech, is that to Trisha's question about adult education, with the amount of people that are currently displaced in various industry, this is the perfect opportunity for community colleges to create programs targeting adult education and upskilling in order for them to basically go into career path that they hopefully that will create a living wage job or even beyond. But a lot of folks don't have the clear sights in terms of what they need to do, where those resources are. And so these reports are now providing some guidance in terms of what those opportunities are. So I think a lot of these questions are kind of merging together in my mind as you're talking about it. They're all interrelated with each other. And for me, as far as opening up the international aspect, I want to bring back is that LA is such a global player. The world's looking at us. And then what we need to do is basically create the opportunity for us to facilitate the investment that's here, so we can grow in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you, Stephen.
If I could just add to that, specifically related to the apprenticeship question, one of the occupations highlighted in the construction career ladder of carpenters indicates a lot of job opportunities and good paid for students related to that. And one thing that just popped in my mind from our previous conversation is sort of retrofitting some buildings and whatnot with proper ventilation systems and filtration systems for things to avoid cross-contamination. That requires a good amount of work from some occupations that can require apprenticeship. So I know it's not a direct answer, but carpenters is in the report.
I'll give it just one more moment. If anyone has any final burning questions, now's the time to throw that in the chat box. I also included my email address. So if you think of something later, or as you look through the report itself, if there's a question that you would like addressed, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can make sure that you get connected with the right person so that we can ensure that you're not only understanding the data, but also understanding how you can utilize that moving forward.
Yeah.
And
I think one thing that I just want to underscore is the importance of our regional partnerships that include government. And I know Patty Castellanos, the deputy for Supervisor Kuehl, LA County Supervisor Kuehl, is with us today, as well as, again, other colleagues from the county and the city, Long Beach and South Bay, and education systems. But the work during these times and the collective work of CCW with COE is to really support all of the colleges, support the colleges and their partnerships with all of our with government and work education and workforce partners overall. But also we're really fortunate to have 7 regional directors of employer engagement that we collaborate with at CCW on a number of efforts. Ruth Emanuel and Katie Mishler and Charlotte Augustine and Ozzy Lopez and Shari at Rio Hondo. And I know I'm forgetting a couple, but this is really a collective effort. And the work, Shannon's been there giving birth to all 16 reports with her team over the last 4 years. Luke in the last year and a half or so has really raised the level and quality of our reports and visibility of the colleges. But it couldn't be done without them and the team at LAEDC, but especially because of our partnerships with the County of LA and the City of LA and so many others to make this all work. And so
Richard, if I can jump in really quickly as well, especially what you said about the governmental partnership with the county and the city, and it's not just the County of LA, but also our surrounding regions as well. Their governments this is a regional economy, so that partnership is so vital. And sometimes as we're looking at COVID-19, we're looking at our own survival, but what ends up happening is the county has created a lot of great programs along with the city to help these companies survive. As we're talking about kind of next phase, if our companies don't survive this particular phase, it's actually going to hurt our employment growth down the line. So that's why these are all linked together. And sometimes looking at the report separately, you're not going to see the full picture. But with these 15, 16 reports lined up and looking at the pathway, the groundwork has been done. So the hard work is coming in 2021. How do we put these programs together in a way that makes sense, and looking at the information and the data and the facts to be able to create the most effective program. So like what you're mentioning, we're at LAEDC are so grateful for these partnership with the county through the supervisor's office, through WEDAX, through the City of Los Angeles, through EWDD, and also the regional partnership with Orange County, Ventura, San Bernardino, Riverside to be able to help make sure that we're collectively looking at the challenge ahead, because we cannot do this by ourselves. And this collaborative that's been happening over the last few years, again, has set the groundwork, and the community colleges has been such an integral part of driving this conversation forward. So I think what we need to, again, utilizing this as a way for us to not lose the momentum as we're entering 2021, to encourage even more collaboration to come up with these collective programs. And I'm going to jump in with the Q&A that was in the not in the chat, but then Q&A with the monolingual speaker or non-English speaker. The upskilling part is also going to be very, very key as we're looking at recovery. We know the folks that are infected by COVID that are recovering is going to be a long-term recovery. And a lot of these folks, I was actually just on the separate call with another organization talking about how the Pacific Islander community and other communities of color are impacted more than kind of the general population. So their need for long-term care that is language-based is going to be so important. So there's an opportunity for community colleges and our governmental programs to create programs to help identify the displaced worker who can speak multiple languages and train them into the healthcare and the long-term recovery side. So there's a lot of potential growth for good job, good pathways. We just need to put two and two together. And hopefully through these reports and through these conversations, we can now stimulate a way for our elected officials and our governmental partners to start helping the community colleges as well as, kind of nonprofit side to come together to create these great programs that we will definitely need in 2021.
Thank you, Stephen. And just to add on to that point, we were so excited for this webinar. Again, I mentioned because people have been asking for so much data since the pandemic began, and data really drives all of the work that we do, and we've already been incorporating it into the CCW's regional program advisories in this past quarter. Also looking forward, this really informs our occupational work, our industry cluster work as well. And it's so important that I've seen so many of our partners on this webinar today, our employer partners, and we really look forward to, continuing to work with them. And, we also want to thank the essential workers. I would be remiss to not mention that as well. They really are the backbone of our economy and our society. So we do want to give recognition to them as well. And we also just want to invite you to be a part of it. Stephen was talking about the regional work. It's a really successful model, and people are looking toward Los Angeles to, actually Jessica right now is presenting at the California Economic Summit. So it really is serving as a prototype for, the state, but then also the nation. And that's really because of the collaborative work that everyone's been doing together. We all have our part to play. And so we're just thankful for all of the different players, and we're excited to continue this work. This report is really going to serve as the foundation for all the work going into 2021. So thank you again so much, Shannon and Luke, for your presentations today. Again, the link is in the chat box, but it's CompetitiveWorkforce.LA/essential. So please do share that widely. It's free, available for download. We have a really great sort of highlights page, so you can easily scroll through some infographics, some of the key takeaways. Again, I mentioned the appendix that has a lot of really great resources around the training at the community colleges. So it's really an exceptional resource, and our data is only as good as we use it. So we want to make sure that as we use it, that you're using it, that you're sharing it, that would really serve to help us as we adapt to everything that is going on right now in the world. So thank you again so much. Thank you to our essential workers, and I'll let Richard close it out.
I was going to ask Shannon or Luke if they want to give a little hint about what our next report will be.
Oh, yes.
Of course. Thank you, Richard. And well said, Claire. I was going to say there are a lot of really useful resources, like I pointed out, that can help raise awareness about these career pathways in frontline industries. But next, we are going to be researching port-related activity specific to the Los Angeles port and the Long Beach port, and support activities for those. Shannon, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add to that, because we've been so focused on this, but that will be coming next early in 2021.
Sure. So we're going to be looking at middle skill occupations that exist in port-related transportation industries. So as Luke mentioned, our San Pedro Bay ports, the Port of Los Angeles, the Port of Long Beach, there's been a transition happening within the industry with a movement towards automation. So we want to take a closer look at how that's going to impact the workers that are there at the ports. And we're also looking at, because it's port-related transportation and goods movement also occurs via air transportation, we'll be looking a little bit at the air transportation industry as well, which of course has been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, with the number of flights just being severely decreased by people not wanting to fly. And so that means that a lot of that cargo that also is being transported by those commercial flights, they're having issues with that as well.
Yeah. So I'll just close by saying that this report is also going to inform one of our 7 regional program advisory board meetings that LAEDC will coordinate this year, this coming semester, with the regional directors for employer engagement. So following automotive, tech, and oh my God, I forgot the first one.
Animation.
Animation, sorry. A great one on animation. And then upcoming, we have web design, esports, accounting, cloud, and then one to be determined based on this report. So we'll be working with the deans and the CCW advisory council to identify that last one based on this report. And so these reports really do inform our work, inform our investments, and inform our partnerships and our priorities. And you are all a part of the work that we do together. We want to wish you happy holidays, and we look forward to your continuing support and collaboration. And don't hesitate to ask more questions if they come to you after today, or to send us ideas about how we could continue to grow our collective efforts to impact students, job seekers, employers, and our regional economy. So thank you, Shannon and Luke, for your excellent work and leadership on our reports, to the LAEDC team for everything you do, and to, for our faculty for being on the front lines of preparing students for the future. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks.